My Mother, The Person and the Patient is an original podcast written and hosted by me, Fatuma Kuso. This podcast is about my mother, Timira Abdussamid Mohammed, Ayaya we call her, and that's the Somali word for grandmother, and her great-grandchildren call her Ayaya too, and that is their way of saying great-grandmother. If you are a caregiver, especially if you have your loved one in your home and you're living with them, and even though you're getting support outside of you, you are responsible for their caregiving. You know how difficult that can be. I know I've been at it for over 12 years now from the diagnosis, and I struggled with it without really knowing what my mother had 2-3 years before the diagnosis, like I spoke about in the beginning of this podcast season. So how do you deal with the daunting task of day in and day out for being a caregiver to a loved one, especially if that loved one lives with Alzheimer's, which is this constant and predictable cognitive decline that leads to a physical decline? I struggle with that all the time, and my struggles include I can't really schedule something that I can do outside my home anytime, because each time that I say I'm going to go meet a friend for coffee, I do not know if I'd be able to keep that engagement, to keep that meeting, because if the person that was supposed to be respite care provider doesn't show up, or if that service is canceled, or if that person runs into challenge and they said I cannot make it today, then I can't do it at all. And that, as you can imagine, comes with challenges where you feel like your life is not yours anymore. You are depending on other people in order to do anything. So the only thing that I can count on is going to work, because I have somebody that comes in that I hired privately to take care of my mother during the day. That's it. When I get back from work, my mother is my responsibility. I have respite providers scheduled throughout the week in the evening, but I might not get those every day, or some days I might. This week I might get it 3 times. The following week I might only get it once, or not at all. On top of that is the emotional hurdles of being a caregiver, especially if you're dealing with Alzheimer's, which is really very unpredictable. So how do you do that? If you are a caregiver to a loved one, it's a good idea to remind yourself why you're doing this, why you are caregiver to this person. Outside of that, this is my husband, this is my wife, this is my child, this is my parent. Outside of that, why are you doing it? Because think about it. You could go ahead and put this person in a nursing home, like I could do if I choose to do it. But you are not doing it. You are keeping them with you. So why are you doing that? What is your purpose? Knowing that will help you deal with all the challenge that come both emotionally and physically, being 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's how you can deal with that challenge. That's one of the ways to deal with it. Another way to deal with it is reaffirm your own perspective on caregiving. Realize that caregiving perspective is not the same for everybody. Just like the care receivers people were caring for are not the same. It's not helpful for you to compare your experience to somebody else, or take somebody else's complaints and challenges as your own. Or if somebody else says, I am happy with being caregiver, that doesn't mean you're a bad person for feeling some days this is really too much. This is too difficult for me to do. I don't know if I can do it one more day. When we complain about things that's expected of us to do, whether it's taking care of your children or taking care of a loved one living with disability or illness or limitations, we don't feel we have the permission to say this is too much. So reframe what is your perspective on caregiving. Why do you do it? If you can answer that question, then you are going to be able to confirm what you're doing. And at the same time, confirm the fact that this is really a difficult task, a difficult responsibility to have. And those two will allow you to continue to be a caregiver because you are admitting your limitations as human beings and feeling struggles and challenges with this task before you some days, and some days not really feeling a challenge at all. And you're also reframing and reaffirming the reason why you are choosing to be a caregiver, the reason why you have your loved one in your own house or you are with them in their own house, so you become their primary caregiver when you know you have other options of putting them in a nursing home. So why do you do it? Those two will give you the comfort of accepting your human limitations and also your desire to do this task, to undertake this responsibility. The third point is taking things one day at a time. Don't think about how would this be year down the road? How would this be next week? I don't mean bury your head in the sand. Make sure you have power of attorney. Make sure you have living will for your loved one. Make sure you know that who is going to be coming Monday morning when you have to go to work. All those are important. But when it comes to you as a caregiver, do not think about how am I going to do this in a year down the road, 2 years down the road. I remember when I became a single parent, my kids were fighting, everybody was arguing. I was just at the end of my rope. And I remember calling my mother and asking her, Mom, how am I going to do this 16 more years? My mother said to me, listen, do not think that far ahead because you won't be able to survive raising these kids. So she said to me, tonight, if everybody did their homework, everybody took shower, everybody had their dinner, and everybody was in bed, safe, with nobody hurt, then you won this game called raising children. So think about it. Just give yourself half an hour. That's it. For the next half an hour, 40 minutes, if everybody eats their dinner and gets their meal in them, I won. Next 40 minutes, if everybody does their homework without anybody being in trouble or getting hurt, then we're great. If they could take their turn and everybody could take their shower and I can shower the baby, we're great. They read their stories, they're all in bed, fantastic. And you won the battle. That's how she explained it to me. So I'm going to use that example with you in telling you that as a caregiver, do not think about the long term in the sense that what's going to happen a year from now. Prepare for it. Prepare for eventuality of your loved one going, but do not sit there and say, I don't think I can do this for another year. I don't think I can do for another 2 years. Just remember, if a year down the road you decide you couldn't do it and you want to put your loved one in a nursing home, then you can go ahead and do that. But while you're at it now, if you confirmed yourself, you are human and some days will definitely be more difficult than others. And there are days where you struggle with the caregiving aspect of your day more than you do in other days. And also decide that your journey in caregiving is not the same as anybody else. Your journey is different and that is okay. And then you take one day at a time. So that is the third point. Don't look at it and say year down the road, 2 years down the road. And on top of that, take joy in the small things you do. For me, when 8 o'clock comes around and my mother is clean in her bed, even if she's awake, because now she's not mobile, she can't get out of the bed like she used to be. what I would do is I would sit and watch half an hour, 1 hour comedy without doing the dishes, without cleaning the kitchen, without doing assignment, without marking, creating lesson plans, nothing. So 1 hour, I would watch 2 episodes of some kind of comedy that would make me laugh, get a cup of tea for myself, and enjoy my cup of tea and that 1 hour of watching that TV quietly. That seems something small, but I learned to take pleasure in the small moments. Those small moments, like that 1 hour with my cup of tea, nobody talking to me. I am not a teacher at that 1 hour. I'm not a mother. I'm not a sister. I'm not a daughter. I'm not a caregiver. I am Fortune Crusoe. I am myself. That's how I end my day every day, 7 days a week. Somebody else looking in might not see that as huge thing. But for me, that is me taking pleasure in the small things. Getting into the bathtub with my soap bubbles and candles and sitting there for that 1 hour with nobody talking to me listening to whatever it is I want to listen to. That is 1 hour that I'm going to enjoy. I realized everybody else's journey as a caregiver is not the same as my journey as a caregiver. And also, I accept 100% my limitations as a human being, a person who's trying to do the best they can, but still have limitations. And some days I feel like I don't want to do this. I don't think I can do this one more day. And I accept that. That's just me being human. And the third thing is not thinking about the caregiving aspect of my relationship in the long term. I'm not going to think, what am I going to do 1 year down the road? I can't do this 2 more years. I can't do this 3 more years. When 1 more year comes, 2 more years comes, then I will deal with that. When I get there, I will cross that bridge. And the fourth thing is taking pleasure in the small things. Like I said, my cup of tea, watching 1 hour of TV or scrolling through social media or taking a bath for that 1 hour with my cup of tea. And that might seem small to somebody else, but for me, it ends my day in a good note, and that has made all the difference. When you listen to how we arrived at my mother's diagnosis and what followed, it's so easy to see her just as the patient, to see her as nothing more than the disease that reduced her to shell of her old self. But I want to also to tell you about my mother, the person, the fierce woman that told her stories unapologetically, celebrating the beautiful parts and harsh realities equally. I want to share with you the stories she told us about her life as a girl growing up in a small village, the tales that marked her adulthood. I want to share with you all her losses and the ultimate winnings. The following chapter is one of those stories reconstructed from my childhood memory. The room enveloped in a thick shroud of darkness. Timida's eyes snapped open, but her mind was alight with an ominous clarity. The details of a vindictive scheme etched vividly in her thoughts. Layla's treachery cut deep, the weight of her words gnawing at Timida's pride and identity. She lay still, the echo of Layla's condescending tone reverberating through her mind, a searing reminder of her supposed inferiority. A shiver ran down her spine, and she cautiously slid out of bed, careful not to disturb her husband. With each step, The weight of her vengeful pressed upon her. She furrowed her brow, attempting to shake the evil notions loose, but they clung to her consciousness like thorny vines. Her bare feet glided silently across the cold floor as she paced, the faint light seeping through the window, offering little solace. The room felt suffocating, the air heavy with the burden of her impending decision. Her gaze fixated on the darkness outside as if seeking guidance from the moon that hung above the silhouette of the distant trees. Yet, as the minutes stretched on, the resolution within her solidified, a sinister blueprint edging its place in her mind. "I have no other choice," she whispered into the silence, the sound barely escaping her lips. The weight of her circumstances settled firmly upon her shoulders. The image of her husband's dismay if she were to drag him into this conflict gnawed at her resolve. The plan coiled around her thought like a serpent, its grip unrelenting. A calculated strike, she mused, her jaws clenching with determination. Layla's hubris would pave the way for her downfall, Timira thought to herself. Her mind had already choreographed the details of the plan. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple, mingling with the uncertainty that still lingered within her. The communal shower became the setting of her retribution, the slick floor an unexpected weapon in her arsenal. As she envisioned the moment of confrontation, a wave of unease washed over her. What if Layla fought back? What if the repercussions were severe? A haunting prospect gripped her heart, threatening to suffocate the courage that flickered inside her. But the alternative was far worse, she reasoned. Her husband getting entangled web of authority dispute was an outcome she couldn't fathom. No, this was her burden to bear, her battle to fight. She steeled herself, her resolve heartening in her gaze. "I must do it," she muttered, a silent oath to herself. The darkness of the receding night bore witness to her decision, the shadows casting her silhouette in an ethereal glow of determination. A smile tugged at the corner of Timira's lips as she stood before the choreboard, her finger tracing over the neatly arranged names. Her heart pounded with a subdued triumph. Her gaze settled on her name, etched in the bold letters like her husband had taught her to recognize. For the first time, she was happy with this assignment. Layla's bay was number 5, she thought to herself with glee. She stopped when she noticed Layla approaching her, hesitant, her expression tinged with uneasy response. "I'm sorry, Timiro," Layla murmured, her voice laced with faint remorse. "I didn't mean to burden you with the shower so often this week. It's just Aisha's back is hurt and Halim is still resting after giving birth." Timira's smile widened, masking the boiling rage beneath. "Oh, it's no trouble at all, Layla," she replied, her tone edged with an unsettling sweetness. "I am happy to lend a hand, especially when it's for the benefit of our community." Timira watched as Layla's mouth moved, but no words came out. Perhaps Timira's response rattled her. Timira gathered necessary cleaning supplies from the dry goods store and began her chores with practiced ease. The afternoon sun cast long rays across the cement floor of the communal shower, illuminating the rows of shower bays that stood in anticipation of the day's cleansing rituals. Her hand moved faster as she navigated through the rows of bays, the sound of her diligent scrubbing filling the space around her. Each bay received a meticulous attention. There has been no match for Timira's determined effort. Bay after bay, she worked her way through the rows, her eyes never straying from bay number 5. Leaving the best for the last, she laughed herself. As Timira approached the last bay, Layla's bay, her pulse quickened. She clutched the small plastic bottle of liquid soap, its weight reassuringly present in her hand. With a steady hand and a devious glint in her eye, she unscrewed the cap, ready to execute the final act of her vengeful choreography. The plastic bottle clutched tightly in her grasp. She settled onto the cool cement bench, her gaze fixed to number 5. Her hand trembled with the weight of her scheme, the anticipation of retribution pulsing through her veins. Layla's voice reached Timiro. Her lips curved in a benign smile, concealing the storm of vindication within her. The soft echoes of Layla's laughter with other women inched closer. Timira's heart hammered in her chest as she tipped the bottle, steady stream of liquid cascading into the cement floor. She controlled her breathing, her expression a mask of calm innocence as she pretended to finish the last touches of her meticulous cleaning routine. "I'm sorry, I'm just finishing yours." With a gentle nod, Timiro motioned for Layla to enter, feigning the innocence of dutiful community member. The scene lingered in a pregnant silence, the air heavy with the impending collision of their fates. But Timiro's resolve never wavered, her facade unyielding. Layla stepped into the bay, unaware of the treacherous ground beneath her feet. My Mother, the Person and the Patient can be found in Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please remember to follow, like, and share, and join me next week as I share with you another episode of my mother's journey as both the person and the patient. Thank you.